Welcome to Entrepreneur State of Mind. I'm your host, Dr. Dale Caldwell, and we have an amazing professor and just an amazing person, Scott Livengood, who I've gotten to know over the last year, a professor at Arizona State University. Scott, welcome.
Good morning, Dale. Happy to be here.
Good. Yes. So happy to have you. You and I have been part of weekly calls about entrepreneur zones, and we'll get into that a little bit. And you are really one of the best entrepreneur professors in the country. But I always like to start with origin stories and say, where were you born, and where did you go to high school?
So my father was in the Army, so I was actually born in Germany.
Wow.
Lived there for about 2 years, and then we moved to Colorado. We were stationed in Colorado, and my parents decided that's where they wanted to retire. So we bought a house and then moved around a little bit to a couple other places, but moved back once he retired when I was 13 to Colorado, and then have been there relatively basically ever since. My mom actually still lives that same house.
Oh, wow.
That we've had for a long time. So Colorado is kind of always going to be home.
And what high school did you graduate from in Colorado?
Harrison High School on the south side of Colorado Springs there.
Okay, and then where did you go to college?
I did my undergrad at BYU. Then I worked for a little Brigham Young University in Provo, Utah. Worked for about 4 years, went back to get my MBA there. Worked for a little bit longer, and then got my PhD at the University of Maryland in College Park.
In College Park, wow! So you really have you've seen the country, you've covered the country. And
yeah, I think that being an Army brat kind of instills that wanderlust in a lot of people,
right.
And so it's hard for me to sit still for too long, and I really enjoy exploring new places and living lots of other in lots of areas. So it's been fun.
So your dissertation was about entrepreneurship, or what was the focus of the dissertation?
That's right. Yeah, so I did my degree was in strategic management, but I looked at kind of corporate entrepreneurship. So I looked at the introduction of new cell phones in the mobile industry, and looked at the competitive dynamics and influence and impact of new product introductions, which is very entrepreneurial in that industry.
Wonderful. And so now let's talk about your professional career. So have you been a professor the entire career, or did you do some other things before you became a professor?
Yeah, no, that's been it. So my first job was at the University of Florida. And I was on the tenure track there for about 3 years. Moved to the Ohio State University for about 4 years. And then, it's a publisher parish kind of a world. And unfortunately, I wasn't publishing nearly as much as the profession would have liked. So I recently kind of switched to the clinical side of the profession. So I'm still a professor, but I don't do as much research. I really focus more on the teaching side of things, and it's been really rewarding. I mean, those who can do both very well are great, but it seems that my kind of talents, passions, and interests are a little bit more on the teaching side. So I've been focusing on that for the last couple of years. Well,
yeah, I mean, you're an extraordinary teacher, and as you know, I'm at Fairleigh Dickinson University, so I see this idea, and a lot of the rules are they're living in yesterday's rules, and publishing, and many folks can't teach their way out of a paper bag, but they write articles and vice versa. So and so now you've been there for a number of years. What kinds of entrepreneurial courses are you teaching or have you taught at Arizona State University?
Yeah, so ASU, it's been great to be here because they really embrace, well, one of the biggest things is inclusion. In our charter, they kind of say we measure ourselves not by whom we exclude. Some of the elite universities say we have an acceptance rate of 8% or 6%, whatever. And for them, that's very important. For us, it's more about inclusion. And so one of the things that I've embraced here is really kind of online or distance types of learning, especially for entrepreneurship, where people who are either working full-time or maybe live on the reservation or have other demands that don't allow them to go to traditional, brick and mortar, face-to-face types of learning environments. And so I've really been able to create courses not only specifically for the classroom setting that is branched beyond that, but also some professional institutions. So I was able to create a series of courses, for example, for Uber, one of our partners here. Oh, wow. They wanted to kind of expand some of their learning opportunities for their drivers and their families. And so I was able to create a series of courses just specifically for them that were always going to be self-paced, online, courses on entrepreneurship, and that's led me down many different paths. So beyond simply just the traditional, normal face-to-face type of, institutional supported learning environments, but also being able to branch out and create courses in lots of different ways for lots of different groups that otherwise might not have access.
That really is phenomenal. Is Uber based in Arizona, or where are they headquartered?
No, I think they started in San Francisco, out in California is where they started. But and honestly, I don't know. It kind of was one of those things where someone in the university had reached out and created a partnership, and this was really the first initiative that they wanted to try. And I did one course as a pilot test, and that actually went really well. And so we've expanded out now to, like I said, create those 5 courses, and it's gone exceptionally well. We've been able to reach literally thousands of people who would not otherwise have had an opportunity to learn more about entrepreneurship. So it's been great.
That is brilliant, and that's a model course. A lot of other companies, like an Uber, could really use that. And so you really have done some fascinating things throughout your career. Now I know you're a Seinfeld fan. I'm a Seinfeld fan. So you've incorporated Seinfeld and entrepreneurship. Tell the audience about that. How did that come about? How did you decide to write a book?
Yeah, thank you. That's been fun. So I did launch a book last year, one of my pandemic activities. It's called The Startup of Seinfeld, a multimedia approach to learning entrepreneurship. And so what I've done essentially, when I teach, I certainly want to cover the basics, the principles and the concepts and the theories of whatever it is I'm teaching, but I like to do it in a little bit of a fun way. And I like to kind of add some context. Early on, I would use Far Side comics, Calvin and Hobbes, comic strips, those kinds of things. But as my audience has gotten a little bit younger, I guess, and more multimedia savvy, I started incorporating videos a lot more in the way that I teach. And so the way that I did Seinfeld was to make little clips that were examples of the concepts and principles and theories that I would present in class, just as a way to maybe better contextualize and relate to the concepts that I was presenting, but also kind of do it in a more educational but entertaining way. So an edutainment type of approach to that. And so as I got to do that more and more, I had an unorganized collection of clips and resources and those kinds of things. So I just decided to stick it all together, and that's how the book was born. So I have the principles and the theories with some graphics, and then a link to an edited Seinfeld clip that's on YouTube that the readers can enjoy while they, I guess, watch the book to a certain extent.
Well, and you really have, you're an empathetic professor where you really understand where the audience is coming from. That really is a gift and a skill, and so many professors understand where they're coming from, and they teach as if they're teaching to themselves, instead of the opposite. And so, I really
unfortunately,
love
a lot
that.
of entrepreneurs do that exact same thing.
Yep.
So
Yep.
they will create a product or a service that satisfies their need, and that's a great place to start, but lose touch a little bit with their target audience and not understand how the customer might benefit from that product or service. And so that's not something that I was born with. It's certainly something that I've been forced, I guess, to create or to develop over time. But you're right, I do try to at least put myself in other people's shoes as best I can, and that's an ongoing process for sure.
And so let's talk a little bit about the Seinfeld book. Just share a couple tidbits with the audience to whet their appetite about now. What are some of the examples that you've used? Because it's fascinating, especially for me and my generation. I love Seinfeld. Yeah,
sure. So one of my favorites is actually in the very first chapter of the book, where because I kind of describe the entrepreneurial process, which the way I say is it's identifying opportunities or problems that need to be solved, generating creative solutions, assessing risk, trying to minimize that risk, assembling resources to make that vision kind of happen, and then presenting it to an audience. And so I found when Kramer was, he was friends with George's father, Frank, who had some supportive issues with his upper body. And so came up with the manzier, or the bro, depending on who you talk to a little bit, but a supportive undergarment for men. And it actually, Kramer perfectly follows that entrepreneurial process, which
Interesting.
I can't think that the writers did that on purpose. I didn't write that entrepreneurial process
Right.
with Kramer in mind, but it was just a serendipitous kind of connection
Wow.
between what I was teaching and what I saw in the show. And so I had to do a little bit of editing just to kind of get those, highlight those points. But that's kind of a fun thing. You know, Kramer was very entrepreneurial, very crazy, very, you know, innovative in his thinking. And I was able to find, I think I have 46 such clips in the book that really match pretty well. I had to take a little creative license there, but match pretty well some of the entrepreneurial principles that I would teach in a normal class. So it's been really fun to explore that side of my interests and passions as well.
I just think that's brilliant. I mean, I really think that's brilliant, because that's where I have a 16-year-old daughter. So that's where they're at. That's what they, that makes it real. And so,
well, and it's been fun too. And honestly, that's one of the beauties I think of entrepreneurship in general is, seeing things that other people can't, and being able to apply one's unique experience, expertise, perspective, passions, talents, all of those things, combining in a way so I can benefit others by providing a humorous context for entrepreneurial principles. But it's been so rewarding for me as well to let both of those, again, parts of my passions shine, not only the theory and the practice of entrepreneurship, but the love of Seinfeld and the creativity and ingenuity that it brought. But being able to put that together, I think, is something unique that I can provide to the world. Now, it's not curing cancer, it's not going to change the world necessarily, but if I can do it in my own kind of unique way, it's a very reciprocal, kind of mutually beneficial process where others can benefit from me doing something that I really, really have enjoyed doing. So it's been a wonderful entrepreneurial journey for myself as well.
But Scott, it really does change the world. I mean, entrepreneurship is really, I don't care what invention, it can be healthcare, it can be, that innovative, and that's why I love this show, Entrepreneur State of Mind, this innovative thinking is the answer to so many of the problems. And so many of the answers are sitting right in front of us, whether it's on TV or other areas. And I love that formula you're using. Are you looking at some other entertainment vehicles to do something similar, to take it to the next level?
I am. So I have a couple other books in the hopper. I'm trying to get through this first one and then create some more online courses and doing some of those things. But yes, I definitely want to continue down this path. It's been a lot of fun, like I said, and so want to continue to try to bring creativity to the things that I teach. So stay tuned, and hopefully I'll have some more interesting books to share in the coming years.
I guarantee you will. And so we've become friends because you've joined Hunter Hastings, who's a mutual friend who I'll have on the show in the future, are looking at this concept I created called Entrepreneur Zones to create entrepreneurial opportunities in economically challenged communities. And you have been really just one of the greatest minds of the group coming together. And so we're going to take a break in a minute, a commercial break, and we're going to come back and talk about Entrepreneur Zones. And by the way, Scott did just an amazing video. He's talented at doing these videos with the characters and so on about Entrepreneur Zones. So we will be back in a couple of minutes. Enjoy the commercial break, and we'll be back with Entrepreneur State of Mind.
So, I'm kind of new here, but I've noticed a trend. My human does this funny thing where she goes around and gets all my toys, and then she hides them in that basket by the door. But it's always the same basket, and it's always in the same place. And then she acts so surprised when I find them, but, she's putting them in the same basket. Again. It's like, hello, that's where you put it last time. You were the worst at hide and go seek.
Welcome back to Entrepreneur State of Mind. I'm your host, Dr. Dale Caldwell, with Professor Scott Livengood, and we began talking about this idea of entrepreneur zones. I wrote a couple articles about this, and Scott has really been really one of the brain trusts in really helping us do that. And so part of that is because of his experience in Uganda. He went over there, and Scott, I want you to tell that story to really help people develop the entrepreneur state of mind in a place where they may not have had opportunities to get support to do that. So, Scott, tell us about this story. How did you end up going to Uganda?
Well, it started with those Uber courses that I mentioned.
Okay.
Another group at ASU saw those courses, and they were already trying to create some online courses for displaced refugees in developing countries. They were focused on English as a second language and wanted to expand into entrepreneurship. Saw my courses and thought, it would be a great opportunity to kind of leverage that. So we started in Rwanda, Uganda, Jordan, Lebanon, and Iraq. And so I had an opportunity to go to Uganda to try to get a better sense of our constituents, so the people we were trying to teach. And honestly, that was a very life-changing experience because I thought it'd just be simple, just to copy and paste what I'd done for kind of an Uber audience, or maybe a more, advanced entrepreneurial audience. But I actually got to speak with the entrepreneurs themselves, the refugees themselves, with others in the ecosystem. So there were professors, there were incubators, there were resource providers, investors, other people around there, and realized that my approach to teaching them entrepreneurship needed to be different than I would, say, in a classroom setting, or maybe for a more, developed audience there. And that's not to disparage them at all. It's just a little different resource base and experience base. And so, but actually getting there and speaking with them and kind of living a week in the life of seeing the resources they had and the resource constraints they had really opened my eyes to a different, more process-oriented approach to teaching entrepreneurship.
Interesting, and that really informed you and really realizing that you can really help people develop that entrepreneur state of mind, whether or not they're starting their own business or working for somebody else. And so what did you find? What were some of the findings as you worked with folks at a grassroots level to really help them become entrepreneurs?
Yeah, absolutely. So, and I agree 100%. I think people can be entrepreneurial, whether or not they start their own business. That's kind of our standard definition of what we think of entrepreneurs or entrepreneurship to be. But if we're talking about creative problem solving and identifying problems to solve and doing it in a unique, again, value-added way, that can be done in all sorts of contexts. And so, one of the things that I learned, and this kind of goes into a little bit of the philosophy behind me writing the book, is really trying to teach people in a way they can understand. So one of my examples, for example, if I were to teach the topic of entrepreneurial finance, either in a classroom setting or somewhere else, I would kind of be a little bit comprehensive about the sources of financing. So I would start with your own personal funds, do friends, families, maybe friends, family pools, angel investors, venture capitalists, banks, then eventually going public with an IPO market. In Uganda, when your idea is, hey, I want to sell bananas on the side of the road, or to help feed my family, or I want to do a bicycle repair shop or something like that is underneath a tree on the side of the road, they don't care about venture capital. They don't care about stock markets and those kinds of things. So I had to then kind of alter my thinking of, let me think about how an entrepreneur would approach what's step one, and do, again, very process-oriented approach. So I would still teach maybe in course 4 or 5 after they've already built a successful business and after they're growing and expanding and maybe going international, those kinds of things. Then maybe I can introduce the concept of venture capital or other types of things. But for the first year or 2 of their existence, they just need to understand basic personal finance, budgeting, basic kinds of accounting, those kinds of things, just to get them started. And then as they grow and progress, I can teach them more advanced types of what we would call typical kind of entrepreneurial process types of things. But it really changed my focus to again, put myself in their shoes and really take that kind of step-by-step approach to help them be successful where they are and where they want to go.
And as you said, which is a brilliant point, is that, there's poverty around the world, unfortunately, but there's poverty in our backyard here in the United States. And so to take some of those principles, and that's one of the things we're working on in these entrepreneur zones, to create these ecosystems but also to help and meet people where they are so they can become successful business folks.
Absolutely, and that's how we got connected. So Hunter had interviewed me about my book and about my work in Uganda, and he brought up the thing. It's great, and the people in developing countries certainly need that help, but we don't have to look very far in our own backyard to find people who also can benefit from this entrepreneurial state of mind, this entrepreneurial mindset. And so he said, I got to connect you with this other brilliant person over here in the East Coast who's doing great things in these entrepreneur zones, and that's how you and I got connected. And I think it's been a great partnership because we have such a passion and belief in really entrepreneurship and the entrepreneurial mindset as being able to change the lives of people and generations to come here in America, in developing countries all over the world. Just, it's a very important concept that we certainly want to get out and help people along their path to being successful.
And Scott, I just want to publicly just thank you for your support and for this Entrepreneur Zone. For the audience, I've written a couple articles. We got the governor to endorse it, and so it was in legislation, and I'm leading a working group. But outside of it, we're really looking globally to really establish these things in areas that many people have given up on. And also, Scott and I and Hunter Hastings are part of this group of nations. You'll see on one of my shows, this group of nations virtual conference to really talk about entrepreneur zones, to really get people excited about the idea of entrepreneurship. And so, Scott and I are teaming up to really kind of push back against this idea that all that matters are the Fortune 500 companies, and so we got to give them breaks. And it really, all that matters really is the local entrepreneurs. So now you've developed curriculum. Scott, talk a little about the curriculum that you've developed to really help to meet people where they are and grow those entrepreneurial skills.
Yeah, so I essentially had to kind of reconfigure most of what I had done before, again, to take that more kind of step-by-step process-oriented approach. And so it's still a series of 5 courses, but the first one is all about, I'll introduce kind of what is entrepreneurship and who becomes entrepreneurs and those kinds of things. But it's all about the problem to solve, and more importantly, the people who have those problems that you're trying to solve, because that's ultimately what entrepreneurship is. It's really that creative problem-solving, value-added ingenuity there. And so it's all about, again, finding a problem to solve and then talking to those people who have that problem and better understanding, what is it that they're trying to solve, what are other ways that they're trying to solve it. And then course 2 follows up with, now we can start working on a solution. So many times people want to jump ahead to, I've got a solution to a problem without really truly understanding the problem. Einstein famously said that if he had an hour to work on something, to solve a problem, he would spend 55 minutes on the problem and 5 minutes on the solution, because so often the more deeply we understand the problem, the solution kind of presents itself, particularly as it's combined with our own experience and expertise and those kinds of things. So those first 2 courses are all about, again, the problem and then the solution. Then it's focused on, let's actually build a firm, which is the 3rd one. Then let's scale that, which is course 4. And then 5, how do I leave a legacy that will be long lasting, perhaps for generations to come, as I now have this thriving enterprise.
We really do. I mean, we're naturally entrepreneurial. That's part of surviving in life, as being an entrepreneur, that we come up with, as you said, solving problems. And so, Scott, the more I hear you talk, the more I really think about higher ed and how wrong they have it. So here you're doing training for Uber and you're doing things in Uganda. I kind of think that that's even better than a boring paper in some journal that nobody reads. And so.
Well, I might tend to agree with you a little bit there. I certainly don't want to disparage the profession. That's certainly an important part of what we do as well. But and it's not for everybody. I think those who can research and do it really well, that's great. I think we do probably need to combine a little bit more of that real world perspective with a lot of the ways that we research. And I think there's ways for all of us to use our talents and abilities to help each other, for sure.
Well, and we're excited because, we're bringing on a small business development center, which provides free consulting to local entrepreneurs and small businesses. And we're hoping to get some professors. There's some great professors that see the value of that, but there's still a lot of professors that are just stuck in theory and don't realize that young people want, well, how does this apply to the real world? And so we're moving there. because of you know, I teach family business world, the entrepreneurial course at the Silberman College, and you're teaching your courses. So what's next for you as you go forward? Scott, you're so talented, you're doing stuff. We're going to make this Entrepreneur Zone a big thing around the world, but what else are you looking forward to do in the future?
Well, I've got a lot of things kind of in that hopper, and always kind of looking for new opportunities. You know, one of the things, just briefly on what you said, I think, you know, for me, kind of the best way I think to teach is a combination. Again, a lot of my stuff is available online.
Yep.
For people who want to kind of do their self-paced. And I think that's great to kind of lay the foundations, and maybe that's good for about 80% of that educational process. But I'd love to see maybe, you know, something along those lines of maybe that last 20% is some kind of mentor,
right?
Or maybe professors who have only taught in the classroom. Maybe it's good for them to actually get out and actually mentor and consult perhaps with early stage companies or entrepreneurial you know, businesses, where they can actually take some of that theory and apply it. And with that kind of personal interaction with professors and with other entrepreneurs and other mentors, maybe they can actually build that to be something successful. So there's a combination of blended learning with a lot of it being kind of, again, those online introduction to the concept, but then have somebody else guide them a little bit to give some feedback for them actually doing it. I think that would benefit both parties very well. For me also, I'd love to kind of evangelize a lot of this. I'd love to, you know, I've you know, speaking opportunities and ways that we can actually share the message of entrepreneurship, and again, how accessible it can be. And so that's kind of what I'm looking at next, is really trying to launch a speaking career, as it were, or opportunities to kind of spread the message to more people. And that's something I'm really excited about. I think we have an important message to share, and just looking for lots more platforms to share that message.
No, I mean, you'd be just great at delivering that message. Do you have a minor, entrepreneurial minor at ASU?
I don't actually. My minor was Japanese, so I did live in Japan for a couple of years.
Right.
And that's why I call myself the Seinfeld Sensei. Sensei means teacher in Japanese. So I've kind of made that as a kind of a branding thing there. But actually, in my PhD, I kind of minored in organizational behavior.
Okay.
So a little bit more kind of the micro side of strategy there. But entrepreneurship is just something I've always been interested in, and it's you know, I've taken a few courses here and there, but mostly I've just kind of done it by experience and just by the combination of lots of research of my own, and then, you know, kind of doing it on my own as well, launching the book and those kinds of things. That's been really informed my process. And I think that's really that combination, again, that blend of personal and professional experience, I think really can help me, I hope, to be able to share the magic and the power and the miracle of entrepreneurship for lots of people. Yeah,
and you really do a great job. Is there an entrepreneur minor at ASU at all?
There is. So we have a major in the business school. We have a major, a minor, and a certificate program. So in the course I'm teaching now, it's kind of a basic introduction to entrepreneurship. I have dance majors. I have environmental sustainability majors. I have people from all over campus, which I love, and I bring people from different parts of the country and different parts of the world, where that difference in perspective and that diversity really helps us learn from each other. And so I try to get them to discuss and share their perspectives as much as possible to really bring that different perspective into what it is we're learning.
It makes a big difference, and great. And well, you're the right professor to do that. Well, unfortunately, we're at the end of time. This 30 minutes goes so quickly. But Professor Scott Livengood, thank you so much for being on here. Just some great insights. I want to thank the audience for watching Entrepreneur State of Mind, and we will see you next week. This is your host, Dr. Dale Caldwell, saying have a great week.